fruit. Amen. Well, I'm 53 seconds over the Afterburn, so I apologize. Where's Marty? Marty gonna beat me up. He gonna cut all this out. But anyway, time for the Afterburn. You have any questions? Steve? Oh, Miss Amy. Questions or comments? Steve is coming around with the mic.
So while you were speaking and you talked about being the gardener and everything, one thing that happened to me, I was in very poor health when I moved here and didn't realize how bad it was until thankfully somebody confronted me with the gravity of my situation. And so I had to change the whole way I ate. I had to change my whole lifestyle, and I had to be willing to do it. And at that point I was, because it was so bad. And starting to do that, I learned, one of the things I learned is that we start out from the elements of the earth, right? Our body is made from all of the elements of the earth. And I remember thinking, wow, we're like, our body is, the flesh part is a garden, right? We're a garden. And I remember thinking, wow, like the result of where I ended up was because of what I had been feeding my garden. So if I thought to myself, wow, if I'm growing this beautiful garden, right, that's gonna have wonderful, good, beneficial plants, am I gonna feed it potato chips, Kool-Aid, not that I ever drank Kool-Aid, but soda, Well, not when I was older. I did when I was younger. Come on, I even had the little plastic pitcher that you could get with your little Kool-Aid points. But you know what I'm saying? So I had that visual image that's what I had done to myself, but now I'm going to do differently. So as you were speaking, I thought if we want to be what Yahweh considers good, which was just some of the, like what you listed, plus however many more is in there, we have to, how are we feeding our garden, right? We can't only be the gardener, but you have to figure out what are you feeding it, correct?
Amen. Absolutely.
Okay.
Garbage in, garbage out. Good in, good out. I mean, that's the reality of it. We want something out of something that we're not willing to put anything into. And that's really what I saw coming when I was awakened. I was like, really, we put so much effort into something that's not giving us the return that we're expecting. But we didn't even know, because the system lied to us, making us think that we were investing in something that wasn't going to give us a return. At least not the return that we were expecting to get. Amen. Great job, Miss Amy. Oh, no, let me. I'm teasing.
Thank you. That was a wonderful teaching.
Oh,
so much appreciated. I didn't get to, I did listen to your first one because I had to help with the children's, but I did listen to it afterwards, and it was really cool. But there's so much from your teaching that I didn't know where to start. But one of the things that you said, we need to understand where we're going. And that stay with me, because I cannot go where he is if I'm not like him. Because I can't enter a sacred place rotten, like with none of the fruits of the Spirit. And when I was looking at the list of the fruits of the Spirit, it's all really about the heart. And all that, joy, peace, patience, kindness, all that is really your heart. And so I was thinking, in my case, I have been neglecting to look at the heart. When you were saying out of the heart the mouth speaks, and by the time my mouth speaks, it's kind of too late, because if I'm producing things that are against or opposite to the fruits of the Spirit, that's rotten fruit right there. But that's indicating that there is a problem with the condition of my heart. So I really need to be very diligent to look at it and to clean it up, right? So that I know that as a result, I will be producing good fruit, right? So that's what I got from it. The other thing that I wanted to mention, or I guess I wanted to ask you, when he says, "For to everyone who possesses, more shall be given, and he shall have overflowing. But from him who does not possess, even what he possesses shall be taken away." So is he talking about, like, what is going to be taken away? Like our ability, I suppose, to be with him in the kingdom? Is that what he's talking about?
Well, it's a metaphor. It's a parable that he's speaking, but you can relate it to that. You can also relate it to anything that's not for him. If your life is not for him, he's taking that away. So nothing else matters if you're not a part of that process. So anything that would interfere with your relationship with him, you know how Rabbi teaches, we have to work out our own salvation with fear and trembling. So if you're not working on it with you, any one of those things, anything can separate you from him. Now, nothing can separate you from his love. He's going to love you irregardless. But if you make the wrong decision and decide to go down the wrong path or do something that's contrary to the agreement, what he commanded, the covenant, then you're not going to be with him. So he's going to take you away. So it could be he takes things away in the process if there are things interfering with that. One thing that comes to mind is when Rabbi was talking about the rich man. And I often share with people, he didn't say that to everybody. And Rabbi teaches everybody doesn't have an issue with wealth. He dealt with the issue of that person. So he said him to that person because he knew that wealth was an issue with him, that he wasn't willing to give it up to have that relationship with the Father. So that thing he had to get rid of. So examining your life, you will begin to see, as you have said, there are certain things in your life that are causing you to not be able to walk in all the fruit and gain the fruit and retain the fruit so that fruit can remain. And it's something you have to do the rest of your life to maintain a healthy lifestyle, a healthy garden, so you can be with him, because rotten fruit don't get in.
Thank you so much. And I also, I guess there was one more thing that I wanted to ask you. I think if I find it here very quickly. Well, about I don't know why, but when you were talking about the tree, and the branches, and then you were talking about the fruit comes from, out of the heart, the mouth speaks. For some reason, I thought, is there a connection or maybe a resemblance between the heart and the tree? Like the heart is something that we need to take care of, right? To connect it to the vine. Maybe Yeshua was using the image of the tree for us to understand kind of how we need to look at it, right? Because the tree, if it's not, like I said, sounds like right now, he gave me that, planted by the rivers of water. Obviously, everything that he does prosper, right? Nothing, their leaves they don't wither and stuff like that. So
stay connected.
Yes. So that's the connection there between the tree and the heart.
You can look at it as a connection there, but you can also look at the tree as, whenever I think of the tree, I think of the Father. So he's the tree. I'm connected as a branch on the tree, connected through the vine. So our heart, we have issues with our heart because we have issues with our thoughts. So it's a feeling, thought, goes to our heart, and then we do. And so a lot of times we mess up because it got in our heart. So we got to protect our heart, guard our heart as we guard his command. So guarding the heart is a very important part. But I always think, not saying that you're wrong, that you couldn't relate your heart to a tree. I just always relate the tree to being Yahweh. But stay in him, stay connected, and you'll get all the nutrients and everything. But the important thing that I want people to not forget is that you have to remain in him. So to endure means to remain until the end. You got to get to the end. So don't just do it for a season and then you give up. Don't just be healthy for a season and then go back to eating potato chips. You endure to the end. Because it was at the end, when he returned, the parable says, he gave the reward or the judgment, the punishment to the lazy one. He didn't say how long it was. You got to endure to the end. You don't endure for a week. You're welcome.
All right. When you talked about goals that are important to me, definitely, but that's just a plan to get what we desire. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because then to me, that the next part would come was maybe we need to ask ourselves, do we value the reward enough to do all that we need to do to get the reward? Because that waiting and the struggles and the instant gratifications which we have to give up in order to get the long-term goal seems to get in our way. So that was some thoughts I had. And then the other thing, back in Matthew, when you talked about how Matthew, it's talking about how we should look to increase what he's given us rather than try to figure out when he's going to come next or what sign is in the heavens to show he's going to come. We should just be busy doing what we're supposed to be doing instead of trying to figure out all this other stuff that's really not important.
Amen.
And then one more last point. You talked about bad fruit and getting cut off and everything, but something I think we should also realize, it's not our responsibility to point out each other's bad fruit. It's the Abba's.
Amen. Amen. It's all relating to staying connected so you can get what you need. Yeah, and I'm definitely not pointing out, she has a hand up, Christine. Definitely not pointing out anybody else's fruit. I don't have enough time. Well, I have enough time to deal with my fruit, and I'm worried about my fruit and those that I'm responsible for, but I'm definitely not pointing out anybody else's. Good job, Steve.
I just wanted to comment on what you asked everybody in the beginning. Why are you here? And I think that's really important because I ask myself that kind of stuff all the time. I think, going back to when my husband and I first got married, when we were doing our premarital counseling, she asked us, why are you getting married? You have to know because your marriage will see dark days. And that's been really helpful. I also lost my train of thought. But I meet with the teachers and staff upstairs, and each year I've asked them, why are you here? Because we see dark days too. It's not always very easy. But then also my husband and I, when we're talking, we ask ourselves all the time, why are we here? Because we will see dark days. We have seen dark days. And so it's just a good question to ask yourself. So.
Amen. Amen. Last night, I'll be a little transparent. Last night, I come to find out, don't laugh at me, Hannah. Come to find out last night that I needed a hug. And I did not know I needed a hug. I just felt like I didn't know what I needed, but I realized I needed a hug after me and my wife had a debate. I was frustrated, and I'm stubborn, just so y'all know. I was frustrated and I was stubborn, and I didn't want to talk to my wife. She asked me what was going on, and she's stubborn. So two stubborn people, So she asked me what was going on, and I don't want to talk about it because I was going through something. I didn't even know what I was going through. I just had a feeling. I was going through, so I don't want to talk about it. You should already know what it is. All that. And so I got up. This was late at night. I got up, and I said, well, she's not responding the way I wanted to respond. Manipulation, I'm manipulating. I didn't realize I was doing this, so that's why I'm being transparent. And I wanted her to just hold me. And I told him I'm being transparent, so I want him to tease me about this lady man. No. But I didn't know that's what I needed, but I just needed a hug. I needed her to hold me. Because I was going through something, didn't know what I was going through. I was tired, I was going through something. But she didn't recognize that's what I needed. That was scary. Everybody looked over there. They coming to get me. Cut my mic off. No. Cut that mic off. So I needed a hug, and I got up and I fussed, and then I came back. I went outside, got some fresh air, came back in the house, and my wife asked me again. She said, so what is going on with you? And I had a fit. And I said, I expect you to know. She's like, you expect me to read your mind? You expect me to know that you're going through something? You expect me, And I was like, well, that's not helping. Let me fuss. I don't need you to fuss back. I mean, this is my turn to get it. I'm trying to vent. Of course, I didn't say that. So don't talk to me. She said, you had a fit. She said, you want me to hold you? I'm a man. Felt like James Brown. It's a man's world. Until she held me. And I felt like a little baby. And I said I was frustrated because I didn't know how to communicate to you that I needed you. I need you to not ask me any questions. I just need you to hold me. And that's how he does us. He does me many times. Sometimes he just holds you. He don't ask you no questions. He don't correct you. He just holds you. He just comforts you. And sometimes that's enough to get you to the next mission. And she said, baby, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to fuss, but you stubborn, I'm stubborn, and you come at me, and then I'm going to be defensive, I'm going to be stubborn. And I was like, well, I felt like you didn't care. She said, I care about you, but I don't know if you don't tell me. I expect you to see through my brain, and you're supposed to know that I had a rough day, and I was, baby, I don't know. That made me think about when the Bible's talking about how a woman leaves her house. He never tells a man to cleave to anything. He would cleave to his wife. But she left her father to cleave to a husband. And so I realized that I like my mama's hugs. I miss my mama. I talked to her last night. I love her, but I talked to her last night. She got on my nerves. So I said, I love you. And I got a hug from my wife. But anyway, a mother's love. And I realized that I miss my mama. That's part of what I was going through. I missed my mama, didn't recognize what I was going through because I missed my mama. And then my wife came and gave me a hug. I didn't know how to ask for a hug because I was dealing with my emotions. I got all four colors, so don't be. I'm primarily red, but I got all fours. I can go jump back and forth whenever I feel like it. I do put on a good show, but I do need a hug every now and then. And so I say that to say that he loves us. And he knows what we need, but sometimes we got to open our mouth and stay connected. Stop getting in our own way, blocking our own blessings. Stop blocking what we need for ourselves because we're too prideful, we're too stubborn, we're too hard-headed, we're too mean to our own selves to not even ask for what we need. And then when we get it, we just snuggle up. Don't y'all tell nobody I said that. Anyway, next. Chris? Oh, Rabbi Tom.
Okay, before my question, I have something I'd like to say, not to you, but to the congregation. This man up here, Brother William Jackson, is in an executive position in Beth Shalom, MTOI. And yet, I've come in here in the morning, and he's helping the kids get into school and everything. But before that, he takes a broom or a mop and he sweeps the floor and mops the floor. He takes a rag and cleans the glasses. He empties garbage. He cleans the sink. He cleans the toilet. Whatever needs to be done. How many people in an executive position would do that? And he's just showing me he has the real heart of a servant. And I don't care what you say to me after this, you get mad at me or whatever. People have to know if you want some type of a role model for serving, I want people to know they can look at you.
Thank you.
Now, my question is, we have the term good. Would you agree that it's easy to maybe misplace the term good or misunderstand it? What I mean by that is we might have some neighbors who are classed as good people. The man goes out to work, he works hard to earn a living to support his family. His wife is a good wife. She does whatever is expected of a good wife. They're good to their children. They raise their children to be good. They don't cheat on taxes. They don't get in trouble. They don't cause arguments. We could say they're good people, but I think maybe you can elaborate on this. We have to understand between that kind of good and good as defined by the scriptures, because people who reject the commandments, Yahweh does not consider good. He might even consider them evil. Something to think about.
Amen. And that's why it's important, and I mention it many times when we're talking about the good fruit and fruit that remains, that you stay in Him, and that the fruit that you have will begin to produce good fruit. You can look at the person. You can look at their seat, maybe they're wearing seat. You can look at their life. You can look at what they do. Because everything good ain't God, but He tells us what good is. And He says there's none good but Him. So if they have no relationship with Him, then they're not good. If there's no fruit being produced that you can see, not that you should be looking and judging. You got to worry about your own fruit, but you should be able to see something visible. Should be some visible identification of fruit, because it should be producing.
I wanted to say about when I was at my work and I met the lady and she was wearing her seat. Yeah, I know. Okay, it was me, and she rang up my order and I asked about if she knew about MTOI. I think I met her before, but I forgot what happened. And she was just like, don't be called rabbi, and he's a rabbi, so I don't listen to him. And so now I instantly thought of the in focus about do not be called rabbi, and I didn't say in focus because I don't think she would know what I meant by watch the in focus. But I said there was a teaching that my rabbi, and it is about it, and why he uses the title. And so I really thank Rabbi and MTOI for having the way of the videos and the in focuses, all because there's no way I could make an argument while she's ringing up my order to talk about why Rabbi is an okay title and go through all the verses, and I wouldn't do it as good as Rabbi could do it. So it's great to hear, to have that to talk about. And now she ignored that. She didn't really care for that idea. She just kept talking about why the title is bad. But I also wanted to say about the different types of fruit when you were talking about the soil and the different types of seed. My store has fresh fruit, which it looks good, but then it goes bad very quickly, and sometimes more quickly than you would like. But then there's canned fruit, right? But then they add all this other stuff, the sugar, and they make it all sugary, and then you have to open it with a can opener, which is never really great. But then there's the frozen fruit, and the frozen fruit I've been getting more often because it's cheaper, and you don't have to worry about it ever going bad. It's consistent. You don't have to. It's kind of like it's the good fruit. In my opinion, and the quality that is different than fresh fruit, and I think it's better. But I just like having the security of it. I don't have to. It can be years later. It will still be frozen. I can take it out and eat one. I even tried Rabbi's favorite sweet sweet cherries that were frozen, and they're so good. So Rabbi, get better.
Awesome, Chris. Awesome.
All right, thank you again, Billy. And twice now, either during your teaching or when Rabbi Tom brought this up as well, too, the question of what defines good according to Scripture came to mind. And for me, it led me to Deuteronomy, to Devarim chapter 6, verses 24 through 25. And it says, "And Yahweh commanded us to do all these laws, to fear Yahweh our Elohim, for our good always, to keep us alive as it is today. And it is righteousness for us when we guard to do all this command before Yahweh our Elohim as he commanded us."
Amen.
So that was one thought that I had. And let's see if I can move on to the next one. I have to shuffle things. All right. So another one that I had is during the parable of the talents that you were going over in Matthew. And it kind of struck me as a thought that a talent is a value, but it's also a measurement. And in Psalm 119:72, it says, "The Torah of your mouth is better to me than thousands of gold and silver pieces." That's the value. But it's also a measurement. And by measurement, for me, it means it's a measure of understanding that was given to us. And I think that works very well in that parable because it's a measure of understanding that the servants received from the master, just like us when we come into this. And it left me with the question of, what am I doing with the measure of understanding that was given to me? So thank you.
Amen. That's awesome. When you talked about that, I thought about the part where he says his own ability. When you talk about the measurement, he gave it according to their own ability. So the master knew the servant and gave the servant according to who was going to produce what. And he didn't know what they were going to produce, but he knew that they had the potential. They had the ability. He knew their ability to produce. And that's the sign of a good leader. For all of the hate mail that I received, I had a very long hate message that somebody sent me about our rabbi, and it really upset me because they don't know him. It upset me that they wrote it because they don't know him. Because if they knew him, they would never have wrote it. And I chuckled at one part of it because they were talking about, it was a little hate letter, but they were talking about how Rabbi has 10,000 followers and he's a mega church pastor and has 10,000 followers on YouTube. I was like, they done messed it up. We got like 30. How many is it, Kurt? Mega church 10,000. Well, we way over 20. 27. They only gave us credit for 10,000. So you stand up for righteousness. You stand up for truth. And people want to find every reason to knock you down or hate on what you're doing. Understand, while you're producing fruit, people are going to look at you funny and cross-eyed because they ain't getting nothing. They probably want the lazy fruit or non-producing fruit. They're going to look at you sideways because you got something that they don't have. But they're not willing to do what you do. Some people are going to look at your life and find out what you do and say, I ain't doing it. I watch you do it. I got family members like that. Look, as long as you believe in God, you do what you do, but I ain't doing that. I'm not giving up my pork chop. I'm not giving up my crab cake. I'm not giving up my shrimp scampi or whatever nonsense, Alfredo. So they good with me doing it. They good with me getting the fruit. But the fact of the matter is, as Rabbi Tom mentioned, they see something that's different. And they want it, but they don't want to do what it takes to get it. They want it. They do want it. Who doesn't want to live forever? But they don't want to do what it takes to live forever. They think you're going to run around and bite people like vampires and they get to live forever. No, you got to do some work. There's work to be done. You sit on the sideline and be lazy, guess what? You can be covenant and you can sit in the pew and come and enjoy everything that the Father has offered through this ministry and not make it in the gate. You didn't produce anything. He didn't get kicked out till the master came. He didn't get thrown out until the master came to settle his accounts. So when Yeshua returns, when judgment day comes and it's time to settle accounts, will you be found producing? What do you have to bring? The only thing that I'm concerned about bringing is me. I'm the fruit. You're the fruit. You should be cultivating your fruit, you. To do his commands, because you're going to stand in judgment day for yourself, by yourself. Your husband, wife, sister, brother, cousin, mama, dad ain't going to be with you. You're going to be there by yourself. And where you going to have the show? I tell my wife that when I get there, the greatest sacrifice, the greatest thing that I could give him is me. I used to think it was things. I used to think that. The story of the talents is a talent, a measure. You think it's something that you need to produce, but the metaphor is, what are you producing in your life? What are you bringing to him? How is your life affecting other people? Is your life producing good fruit in somebody else's life, or you just want to keep all the good fruit to yourself? You want to keep all the good to yourself. Is your mind and your heart right, in the right place, with the right goal, that you're not just trying to get there by yourself? I'm not trying to get there by myself. I know I have to go by myself, but I want to take some people with me. I want to get there and see Rabbi. I tease him. I was at his house and he had on some flip-flops, and I look at his little feet. It looks so cute. I probably got fired. He probably home right now. You fired. And I try not, when I was there, he would look just as good as he looks standing here, and I try because he's such a strong man. Amen. So to see him in a state that appears to be vulnerable, it concerned me. Not concerned me like I was worried, but more that I had to protect him. Felt like it's my duty to protect him, to hold him up, to encourage him, to strengthen him, to be there, you know? But I love him and I love his wife. But I want to see all of you there. All I can do is share with you. I tell people all the time, I can take you the information, but I can't make you think. You got to think for yourself. But if you got the goal right, if you know why, you know what your why is, you'll get there. What did Rabbi say? If you're doing what you're supposed to do, you're where you're supposed to be, you'll get to where you need to get to. Where do you need to be? Connected. Who's next? Oh, he sat down. Go ahead.
Just a side note or a comment, something that stuck out to me, because I grew up in the church, so I had a lot of ideas of what a good person was, and I wasn't a murderer, and I didn't steal, I didn't do all those things, so hey, I was getting in, you know? And it wasn't until the Father opened my eyes that he showed that I had some bad fruit that I had what's the right word? Gathered along the way. And it's not all gone. In fact, just 2 days ago, I blew up. And the Father was quick to say, that's not going to get you into the kingdom. And I had to apologize to the person that I blew up at and ask for forgiveness. So my side note, or my little tidbit here is, I guess it's a question about, the bad fruit that you gain along the way, but it's encouragement that when the Father wants to take it, and that he'll replace it with something so much better. So much better and so much more encouraging, I guess. And I'm hoping that I'm making sense, but mainly just when I had my issue 2 days ago, I heard what we were just talking about is, do you really want to hear me say, depart from me, I never knew you? And I was just like, but I go to church, but I'm covenanted, but I do this and I do that. Depart from me, I don't know you. And it just really hit me. And I have my little ones that aren't so little anymore, and they watch. And they really watch. And when mom loses her temper and when mom says the wrong things. But I'm able to apologize and try to make it right. But I just wanted to give, I guess, my 2 cents about the bad fruit that we've gained along the way, to allow the gardener to prune us and replace it with the good fruit. So, thank you.
Amen, amen. I was going to bring that up, but you brought it up for me, the Galatians 22 talking about the good fruit. So when you get rid of the bad fruit, Rabbi teaches us you need to replace it with something. Replace it with the good fruit. So you lost your temper, so you need self-control. You didn't have patience, so you need patience. It tells us right here, once we set our goal and we know what our goal is, how to achieve the good fruit. So all of these areas in our life in Galatians, we need to be working on these areas in our life to get to where he wants us to be. Because we need this fruit. This is the fruit in us that he'll receive when we get there. We're not going carrying 10 talents. Hey, I produced 10 talents. No, what did you produce in you? I gave you abilities to produce in you. A lot of times we get hung up on the external things. Oh, I want the big house, I want the big car. Our focus got off. We got off focus. I was telling my wife last night, and this is before I had a fit, but I was telling her I was over at Berkson. I love architecture, okay? I like architecture and detail and design. And I like Berkson and Rabbi's house, some intricate details and architecture that they have. And I was telling my wife about it because we get excited about those things. And I shared with her that something that Rabbi shared, him and Berkson used to go out and look at nice houses that they thought maybe they couldn't get at the time, dreaming. And I said, me and my wife is the same thing. But something that I shared with my wife that I believe Abba shared with me is, once you can get it, it won't mean the same to you. Don't let things distract you from your purpose. So Rabbi is on goal. Berkson is on goal to get to where they're going. If you decide to stay in him and stay connected through what Yah has provided, you'll get to where you need to get if you are where you're supposed to be. But they're on a mission, and what they have has not changed them. It hasn't changed them. They were like me and my wife looking at a nice house. One day I get it, don't know how I get it. Rabbi said the question that I thought about a million times. I always wanted to know, what did the person do to get the house they live in? Don't you think about that sometimes? Well, I wonder what they do. What they do? I was impressed when they said, I don't know if it was Berkson or Rabbi said, when Berkson used to make $40 an hour. I've never made $40 an hour when I ever worked hourly. So I thought that was very impressive. I was trying to calculate it, a distraction from my goal. But I just thought about it, So we got to guard our thoughts, Jana, and bring all of those things that we think about, bring them under subjection to his word. So we can line it up straight and get it fixed, replace it, get rid of it, stop carrying around dirty, stinky fruit. We like to save it because we think we're going to need it later. Folk like that? That old lady in church? We had an old lady in church, I'm sorry, but that's where I come from, so you got to deal with it. I'm not there anymore. But it was this one old woman that always had the peppermint at the bottom of her pocketbook. That had all the lint on it and a little tobacco because she probably smoked. I said, here you go, baby. You want a piece of candy, you look at the candy, you got to take it because it's disrespectful if you don't take it. And then you go down the bathroom, you're trying to rinse the dust bunny off of it and a little bit of cigarette tobacco off of it because you want to eat it, but you... Anyway, I had a flashback. Go ahead. Who's next? Live stream. I'm sorry, Kurt. Shamash Kurt.
Okay. First question. Some of these, you'll have to tell me if you covered these already. What is the best thing to do when I'm scared of producing new fruit? For example, sharing the gospel.
Seek counsel. That should be like we should have something flashing in the background that says seek counsel. Well, I really don't know the context of sharing the gospel. As Chris mentioned so wonderfully with the lady at the supermarket, he simply referenced, and Rabbi teaches us to reference his teachings. I've heard Rabbi counsel, been with him in many counsel, he referenced his own teachings. So we don't want, unless we've been trained to go and share the gospel as a trained disciple, there's disciples that were sent out were trained to do the job, then we should not be being concerned with sharing the gospel. We should be concerned with growing the fruit. And if you don't understand, you need help with learning how to grow the fruit or cultivate the fruit that you have, you need to seek counsel. But it's not your job. If you're on live stream right now talking to me, it's not your job. And I'm not being smart. I'm just saying it's not your job to worry about sharing the gospel. This is the way I share. I get on my family page and I'll share the link to the service. You can share that way. You can get on the link. Many of you do. Get on your Facebook or Twitter, whatever, and you share a link. Just share. If they get it, they get it. They don't, they don't. So that's what I would recommend. But call and seek counsel, because I don't know the context of you sharing. But if you're not trained to share and it's not what you've been anointed and appointed to do, I would refrain from sharing until you have the right, proper context and training to do that.
Would a plateau in life, a roadblock, constitute being a lazy servant? And if so, how long do we go back to bearing good fruit?
Can you repeat it, please?
Would a plateau in life, a roadblock, constitute being a lazy servant? And if so, how long do we get back to bearing good fruit?
You're only a lazy servant if you don't get back up. Falling doesn't count you out of the race. Not failing to get back up puts you out of the race because you're not producing. You're being lazy. There's nothing happening. We're going to hit hard times in our life. Trials and tribulations are going to come, but they come to make us stronger so we can get up and keep running toward the goal. But staying down or falling down or plateauing in life does not disqualify you from the goal. What disqualifies you is failure to get up and keep moving towards it.
All right, next question is how to practice and or live out good fruit when walking alone and isolated. I feel like standing still. Only I and Abba know how I walk.
Well, that's where it counts. It's between you and him. You work out your own salvation in fear and trembling. It's about you and him. So you can be isolated. You're connected because you're on live stream. So you're connected to a source to be fed. And as the source is feeding you, while you're in isolation, he's creating something in you. There are things that you can work out. Go through Galatians 22 and make sure you've mastered that each and every day. Because as long as you got breath breathing, as long as you're breathing breath, you have an opportunity to make it, but you also have an opportunity to not make it. Because we can get stagnant thinking we've arrived somewhere, and we haven't. You haven't arrived until you hear, well done.
Well, this is a comment from Kelly. What does the fruit do after it's produced? It nourishes others and grows new trees. Our fruit, things we do and say, can cause others to grow and be nourished. Amen.
Fruit produces more fruit. More fruit produces much fruit. Much fruit produces fruit that remains. So good job, Kelly.
All right, next question is, how can we see our own good fruit? You just kind of answered this. Do we see through others that see it in us? How do we know?
First thing I would say is look in the mirror. You should know. You should be examining yourself every day to know what kind of fruit you're producing. Read through Galatians. If any of those things are not you, in Galatians 22, the fruit of the Spirit, that's what you should be working on. If you know you just blew up and you lost your patience, you should be working on that. If you knew that you had a fit and said a bad word, if you call it a bad word, then you know you need to work on self-control. So you don't need, others acknowledge what Yahweh is doing in you, and that's great. But what if you're in the lady that was before in isolation and nobody ever sees her? So it's for you. It's in you. Work on you.
All right. Now this goes back to a Rabbi Tom comment. So with what Rabbi Tom said, even when we see people that show the fruit of the Spirit, if they are not covenanted and keeping the commandments of Yah, are they considered not good?
They're not good. I don't know how they would know if they're keeping it or not, but Maybe they're close friends or family, I don't know. But if they're not producing good fruit, if they're not covenanted, then they're not getting in. We see covenant people not getting in. So why do we think that uncovenanted but doing good things qualifies you to get in when covenant people don't get in? So we got to be careful trying to understand what is good. What is good is what he said is good. The only way to be good is to do righteousness, which is to follow his commands. So if we're not righteous, we're unrighteous, which means if we're unrighteous, we don't get in, whether we covenanted or not. But if you're not covenanted, that's a definite no, you're not getting in. If that makes sense.
All right. And what about people who suffer severe mental health issues that really makes everything a struggle?
I would suggest they seek counsel. Whenever there's any kind of mental involvement there, they need to seek counsel to get proper instruction. Because we don't know. We'll send them to Janet. Teasing.
That's it. We're up to date.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate all of you and your awesome comments and questions. Thank you. I really like, first time I ever heard it was from Rabbi, I really like his idea of replacing. I always thought when you got rid of something that it was gone, right? But like I know, those things that you thought were gone creep back in if you're not guarding yourself. Those things that you got rid of or you thought you got rid of, you may have cleaned out your house, and these things come back. And they come back because you haven't replaced the thing that you took away, with something else. So you didn't replace the anger with self-control. You didn't replace the loss of patience with having patience. I know one that I'm still learning to deal with is long-suffering, because I really don't understand it in the full context I believe that I should understand long-suffering. Because I would think that long-suffering, or I thought that long-suffering was being passive, and that's not it. Passive is not long-suffering. That's being lazy because you don't want to deal with whatever it is you need to deal with. You just rather not deal with it. And I understand that. I deal with, I was going to say white people, but everybody out there don't know what that means. So the color code. I'm talking about the color code. I know this is, look. I don't think they knew I was speaking today, and I got a hate message last night. So I don't, so I guess it just, because I'm standing here, I got a hate mail. Like, really? Okay. Yes. All right. Well. But anyway, long suffering and, replace those things in your life with something. You have to replace it. And then you build on it, and you keep building on it. But the most important thing, that you have all your fruit. You went through all this process to get your fruit. I'm going through the process now of trying to buy a house, okay? I haven't had credit cards in 20 years. So for me to try to buy a house, I got to get some credit established because I ain't had credit cards in 20 years. I got rid of all of them and tore them up and cut them up like Dave Ramsey said. Now I got done. And the banker said, you know what, it's good. You're talking about good. Your credit is good, but it ain't good enough. So you got some things to work on. So you can get to where you need to get to buy a house. We need to do that in our life because once we get these things, we want them to remain. That would be a sad day on Judgment Day to get through all that you've gone through to get there and not get anything. For him to say, depart from me, that's just horrible to me. To me, because I know I'm trying to produce. I have a goal. I want to be with him. And the last thing I want is for him to say, I'm not going to be with him. I used to tell my kids, and Rabbi clarified it a lot for me coming into this walk, but I used to say, to me, you know what hell is to me? What they try to tell us in the church, but what hell was to me was not being with him, to be separated from him. That was the idea that I had, to not have his presence, to not be around him, to not know him, to not be with him, and that's all I want.